Ayla never planned to be a hero. She was just a tired girl walking home after a long double shift at the diner. Her hands still smelling faintly of coffee and dish soap. Her shoulders aching from carrying trays all day. The kind of exhaustion that makes every step feel heavier than the last. Yet that night something in the air felt wrong, the street unusually quiet. The kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound too loud in your own ears. She was only 2 blocks from home when she heard it, a low, strangled groan coming from the shadowed alley beside the old hardware store. At first she froze, unsure if it was an animal or a person. But then she heard it again, a human voice. Desperate and fading, Ayla's fear told her to keep walking, to mind her own business, but something stronger pulled her toward that alley. Something stubborn inside her that refused to leave someone suffering. When she stepped into the dim light of the flickering street lamp, her breath caught in her throat. A Marine, bleeding, gasping, barely conscious, was slumped against a dumpster, his uniform torn and soaked in dark blood. 3 men stood over him, each holding long, serrated knives, their faces masked. Their intentions unmistakable. For a heartbeat, Ayla thought she was going to die. But when one of the attackers kicked the injured Marine in the ribs, and the man let out a broken gasp, something inside her snapped. Fear turned to fire. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a rusted metal pipe, half hidden behind a trash bin, and before one of the attackers could turn, she swung with every ounce of strength left in her body. The crack echoed down the alley. The gang turned on her instantly. The first knife sliced across her forearm, hot pain burning down to her elbow, but she didn't drop the pipe. She stepped between the attackers and the wounded Marine, pushing him behind her with one shaking hand while swinging wildly with the other. A blade stabbed into her side, then another into her shoulder, but Ayla refused to back down. She screamed through the pain, swinging again and again, landing blows on skulls, ribs, and arms. Sirens finally wailed in the distance, blue lights flickering against the brick walls. 2 attackers ran. The last one dropped after Ayla caught him under the jaw with the pipe. Her vision dimmed. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed beside the Marine. As darkness closed in, she heard his weak whisper, barely audible, filled with disbelief and gratitude. You saved my life. Why?" And then everything went silent. Ayla woke to the sharp smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. Her vision blurry, her body heavy as if weighted with stone. For a long moment she didn't know where she was, only that her ribs burned every time she tried to breathe. When her eyes finally adjusted, she found herself in a hospital bed, white sheets tucked tightly around her, her left arm wrapped in thick bandages and her abdomen braced with layers of medical tape. 7 stab wounds. 7 places where cold steel had torn into her flesh. A doctor told her it was a miracle she survived. 1 blade had missed her lung by barely an inch. The room's fluorescent lights hummed above her. Yet something felt off, something tense, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. 2 police officers stood outside her door, refusing every visitor except medical staff. Through the thin curtain, she heard impatient voices, reporters trying to slip in for interviews, nurses whispering that a civilian shouldn't be mixed in with a Marine case, and detectives murmuring about loose ends. Ayla's first thought wasn't about herself, it was about the Marine she had shielded. Private Lawson, the unconscious, bleeding man she'd fought to protect. She asked the nurse about him, but the woman only offered a quick shake of her head and a vague answer. He's alive, but still critical. Doctors are working. No one told her what happened next. No one told her why a Marine had been alone in that alley. No one told her why 3 armed men were trying to kill him. Every question she asked hit a wall of silence. That silence terrified her more than the knives. She tried to sit up, ignoring the pain tightening across her stitched ribs, but her arms trembled from the effort. As night fell, The hallway lights dimmed, and the hospital grew quieter. That was when she heard them, two detectives arguing just outside her room. Voices low but urgent. "We can't keep her here," one hissed. "She's a target now," the other replied. The cartel thought Lawson was dead. Once they learn she interfered, they'll come for her next. A chill ran through Ayla's entire body. Cartel, target, danger, everything she'd done in that. Allie suddenly felt like a doorway she couldn't close. She looked around her room, one window, one door, both too thin to stop the kind of men who stabbed a Marine 7 times without hesitation, for the first time since the attack. Ayla felt truly afraid. Not of the pain, not of the memories, but of what waited for her outside that hospital door. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty: whatever she had stepped into wasn't over. When Ayla was finally discharged, her body still felt stitched together with pain, each movement sending a dull throb through the 7 healing wounds. She wrapped her coat tight around herself, hoping it would hide the trembling in her hands. The hospital felt like a shield, and stepping outside felt like walking into open fire. Still, she forced herself forward, wanting nothing more than the familiar safety of her small apartment. But when she reached her street, something felt wrong immediately. A black SUV she had never seen before was parked near the corner-tinted windows, engine running, not moving. 2 men sat inside, barely visible, but she could feel their eyes tracking her every step. Her neighbor's curtains twitched as if people were watching, yet pretending not to. Ayla swallowed hard and walked faster. Inside her apartment, she locked the door twice, then a 3rd time. She leaned against it, breathing hard, trying to convince herself she was imagining things. She spent the next hours trying to rest, but every small noise from outside made her heartbeat quicken. Around sunset, her elderly neighbor, Mr. Rafiq, knocked softly. Before Ayla could speak, he whispered, "Beta." "Some men came earlier, military-looking. They asked for you." "Military-looking? Are you sure?" Ayla asked, her stomach dropping. He nodded. "They weren't police. They stood like soldiers. They said they'd be back." Ayla shut the door, her mind spinning. Marines, detectives? Or someone pretending? She couldn't tell. As darkness filled the street, her nerves tightened. She reheated soup, but didn't eat a bite. She sat with the lights off, clutching a kitchen knife. Listening, every footstep outside became a threat. Around midnight, just as she closed her eyes for a moment of rest, her phone buzzed sharply. She almost dropped it. The number was unknown. The message was only one line: "Stay inside. Do not open the door for anyone." Her breath froze. Her hands shook harder. Who sent it? The police? The Marines? The same people who stabbed Lawson? Someone watching her from outside even now. She inched toward the window and lifted the curtain just a sliver, their shadows moving, slow, deliberate. Footsteps stopped directly at her door. Ayla held her breath so tightly her lungs burned. Someone was out there, waiting, listening, and she knew this night was only the beginning. The knocking at dawn wasn't normal. Knocking that shook the entire wooden frame of Ayla's door, hard enough to rattle the glasses in her kitchen cabinet. She jolted awake on the couch, heart racing, knife slipping from her hand as she scrambled upright. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and pale light leaked through her curtains, making the room feel colder than it was. For a moment she didn't move. She just listened. 3 knocks. Heavy, controlled. Not like a neighbor. Not like a criminal either. Something in the rhythm felt official. She forced herself to the window, her wounds pulling painfully with every step. She lifted the curtain just enough to see outside, and the breath left her body in one hard rush. 7 Marines stood at her doorstep. Not police, not detectives, not men in black suits. Real Marines, uniforms sharp, boots dusted, stance solid. Their posture alone told her they weren't regular units. They were higher, harder, the type you don't see unless things are serious. The one in front was older, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that looked like they had seen more war than peace. When he spotted her face peeking through the curtain, he didn't shout. He simply nodded once, firm and respectful, and spoke through the door. "Miss Isla, we're not here to harm you. We need to talk. It's urgent." Her hand hovered over the lock. She remembered the message from last night, "Stay inside. Do not open the door for anyone." Her fear and confusion battled inside her chest. But these men, something about them felt too disciplined, too precise to be imposters. Slowly shaking, she unlocked the door. The Marines didn't storm in. They didn't push past her. They stood quietly, waiting for her permission. The leader stepped forward and introduced himself, Master Gunnery Sergeant Hall, United States Marine Corps. His voice was deep, steady, carrying a weight that demanded trust. Holly told her they knew everything about the alley, the knives, her stepping between Lawson and death, her fighting until she collapsed. They also knew something else, something she hadn't been told. The attackers weren't random criminals. They were hired men connected to a cartel involved in weapons trafficking. Private Lawson had witnessed a deal go wrong during a covert operation. The cartel assumed he was dead. When Ayla interfered, she became a threat, a witness they hadn't planned for. "You're on their radar now," Holly said quietly. "And they don't leave loose ends." Ayla's legs went weak, but Holly wasn't finished. "That's why we're here. Lawson lived because of you. And because he lived, we have a chance to stop these people. But we need your help. Every detail, every face, every word from that night." For the first time since the stabbing, Ayla realized something. She wasn't just caught in a nightmare. She was now part of a mission. Ayla sat on the edge of her couch, hands trembling as the Marines formed a protective half-circle around her living room. Their presence filled the small apartment with a strange mix of danger and safety, like being surrounded by thunder that chose not to strike. Master Gunnery Sergeant Howell pulled up a chair and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his sharp eyes fixed on hers. "We need to hear it from you," he said gently, not like a soldier giving orders, but like someone who understood the weight she carried. "Every moment of that night matters." Ayla took a deep breath, feeling the stitches tug at her side, and began to describe everything: how she heard Lawson's groan, how she saw the three masked men, the way they communicated with slight gestures, the tattoos on their knuckles, the pattern of their knives, the symbols she didn't understand. The words whispered between them before they attacked her. The Marines exchanged looks. Details she thought were meaningless suddenly connected dots they had been chasing for months. Hale's jaw tightened when she mentioned the tattoo shaped like a jagged V on one attacker's wrist. "That confirms it," he muttered. "They weren't just assassins, they were enforcers." When she finished, Ayla felt drained, like she had emptied every memory, every burst of fear into the room. For a moment, there was silence, heavy, thoughtful silence. Then Holly stood, and the other Marines followed, almost in unison. "You saved a Marine," Holly said. "And because of that, you saved intelligence we thought was lost. What you did changed the direction of this entire operation." Ayla shook her head weakly. "I didn't know any of this. I just didn't want him to die." "That's exactly why we're here," Holly replied, his tone softer than before. "People like you, the ones who step in without thinking of themselves, are rare." She didn't know how to respond. All she felt was exhaustion, pain, and a rising fear of what came next. Then the apartment door opened again, and a wheelchair rolled inside. Private Lawson, alive. Pale, weak, but alive. Alia's breath caught as he lifted his head and gave her a faint, grateful smile. Slowly, despite his injuries, he raised his hand and saluted her. "Ma'am," he whispered, voice raspy but steady, "you stood between me and death. So now, the Marines stand between you and anything that comes." Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't let herself shed until now. Holly placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're under our protection. You're not alone anymore." As Ayla stepped out of her apartment for the first time with Marines beside her, she realized something powerful. She hadn't survived a nightmare. She had survived to become part of a fight much bigger than herself, and the Marines were now her shield.